With all the craziness in this world, we are here to have open and honest conversations to help navigate our thoughts.
Sometimes we are right and sometimes we're wrong. But in the end, if we aren't learning, we aren't living.
This is Philip.
And this is Wes.
And we are
Two Bottles Deep. Philip.
Hello, Wes.
Hi, it's great to be with you.
It's good to be with you, babe.
Another week, anter $1.
Is that how that goes?
We don't even make
another
$1.
week, another $1.
No, it's another day, another $1.
Oh, yeah.
But let's...
Wait a minute, there's somebody here with us?
Yes.
How
look at
odd. We're
that.
not speaking to her yet.
Yeah, just ignore her the entire time.
Yeah.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, today we have an esteemed guest, Makenzie. We go way back. Way back. We're going to get into that. But Makenzie is a therapist, a body image coach here in the Nashville area who specializes in treatment of body image concerns, anxiety, depression, as well as co-occurring disorders, including eating disorders, substance abuse, and trauma. She serves as a director of operations for The Collective, a treatment center focused on social health and connection. She's heavily involved in activism efforts, bringing awareness and raising support for the eating disorder recovery community in the area, particularly for folks in fat and plus size bodies. So please give a warm welcome to Makenzie. Yes,
Makenzie,
welcome.
thank you for doing this.
Yes.
We really appreciate your time.
I'm excited to be
It's
here.
good to see you.
Good to see you too.
We go way back. We used to work together.
Yes.
And
Property management?
Property management.
Yeah.
Philip loves talking about property.
Yes,
management.
upsell.
Price per square
Price
foot.
per square foot.
What's your view? You know, whatnot.
Mhm,
But
mhm.
do we have any stories from? We have a lot of stories from that property.
Yeah. I don't know if
I
this is
met
the
you
podcast.
at Wes's birthday party that one of us doesn't remember.
I believe that is probably true. That we did meet at that party.
My memory of the birthday party was there was a bus involved, there was beer,
Mhm.
and was that like a bar, like a themed bar, like a outdoorsy?
It was like outdoor, indoor.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
had like the covered roof because
Yeah.
it was December 30th. And
Yeah.
there was a fire pit. We had the whole place, had the whole
Mhm.
bar. So it was Stephen Kelsey came in from
Yes.
Chicago.
Mackenzie, do you remember that lengthy
yeah.
conversation you and I had around the fire pit?
No. I don't
You were
even,
so kind. You told me I was the hottest person you'd ever seen.
I believe that to be true. Drunk Makenzie she is a complimenter. She loves she loves to love.
So no memories from that night.
I mean,
I'm-
yes, I remember getting there.
Something about a birthday.
It was
Something about a birthday. I remember some buckets of alcohol.
They were pouring stuff into like, remember the trick or treat buckets?
Yeah.
Like
Mhm.
that's what, just
Yeah.
like what? There's like a gallon of stuff, but it was good. They had shots and those are
Yeah.
my party days. That was probably 5-6 years ago.
That's
Yeah.
I
6.
think 6.
Yeah, for sure. Because
we've
I've been
known
here
each
8. Because it was closer to when I first moved here.
other.
so
Okay.
if
Yeah.
people are keeping up, with my journey in there,
How long you've been in
right?
Nashville,
Philip
yeah.
just gave us another clue. It's how long he's been here. Oh, where are you from, Mackenzie?
So I am from the Nashville area. I'm from Lebanon.
Okay.
So
Now,
Lebanon.
are we? I was going to say, do we say Lebanon?
Lebanon.
Not Lebanon, y'all.
No.
It's Lebanon.
No, I actually spoke to someone who was from Lebanon, the country, and he was like, actually, we pronounce it closer to how y'all say it.
Ah, so I've been
And-
saying it wrong.
Oh,
Lebanon.
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 So grew up in Lebanon.
Yeah.
Any good memories?
I mean, Lebanon was great.
Yeah. It's a pretty small. How big of a town is
So
Lebanon?
it's grown since I have like grown up there. Now, I mean, there's probably like close to 40,000 people. So I
Ooh.
mean, like it's
Yeah, Mount Juliet, Lebanon. They're kind of
Mhm.
growing together out there.
They really are. Yeah. I went to college out there too. We were talking about the Taylor Swift concert. She filmed Love Story at my college.
Oh,
So that's
really?
our
What college did you
Cumberland
go to?
University.
Okay,
Yeah.
nice. So what'd you get your degree in then?
My degree, my bachelor's is in social sciences.
Okay.
So very vague, whatever I needed to do to
right.
graduate. Yeah.
Piece of paper.
Yep.
Well, and we're going to jump into it here in a little bit, but you just went back and now you're a therapist and you got your degree and you're getting board certified. And we
Yeah.
actually have you in here just to give us a free therapy session.
Right,
But we're
right.
glad
It's going
you're
to take
here
a
today.
while. Got a lot going on.
But yeah, so Lebanon, what we like to ask this. Favorite restaurant or favorite food in the area?
Ooh.
Lebanon, Nashville.
Okay. favorite restaurant is probably I really love Barcelona.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I
that's a good
am
one.
I am a girl that loves some tapas because I don't like to commit to anything.
You can get two of them if
Yeah.
you want.
I've never heard of that reasoning for tapas, and I like that.
Yeah. I'm very much the person that when we go out to restaurants, I'm like, no, y'all have to order something different than me because I need to try y'all's
Yeah.
too. And so that's why I
the
really
fun part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why tapas are great because I just get to have everything.
What was your first job ever?
Ooh, I worked at Coach,
Oh,
purse store.
oh,
Yeah. We used to have an
Little-
outlet mall in
little
London.
fancier
Yeah.
job than I was hoping for.
Yeah, mine was Pizza Man.
Right. Mine was Bonanza Family Restaurant.
Yeah. One upper over
Yeah.
here. She also brought like 8 laptops with her. So
It's like, what?
Rich.
Right. Are you a hacker?
Yes. Yep.
I'll
That's
be
it.
hacking during this
I don't know who
podcast.
these are.
I'm gonna be totally honest. I like looked in my bag. I grabbed the one that I'm currently using to film myself, and I was like, "Oh shit, there's another laptop in there. Where did that
This
come
is
from?"
that one. First childhood memory.
First childhood memory. I think it was me trying to convince my mom that I didn't need to go to kindergarten because
Yeah, like a presentation. See on the left here. This is-
Exactly. My reasonings were that I knew my ABCs and I could count to 10. So, like, what the hell else do I need to know from school?
Brilliant argument.
Yeah. Hey, look, I went on to get a master's. Okay, so
Yes.
I feel like that was great reasoning.
You are a smart person.
I'm glad
You are.
think so.
You're really smart.
I thought he was going to give you an IQ test or something.
I think a lot of it is probably the glasses.
Oh, yeah,
But,
for sure.
Yeah, like it really ups
Also, your master's degree in like
Yeah.
psychology or whatever you got it in.
mental health counseling.
Oh,
yeah.
That sounds like you really did your research there, Wes. I know Makenzie really well.
We know our guest. I've worked with her for 6 years. What's your last name?
We did
So-
just find out what my middle name was, though.
And what,
Yeah,
what is it, Wes?
I thought it was Geraldine, but it's Danielle. There was a Dean.
Yes. Yeah.
Mine's Dwayne and yours is Eugene. I love it.
Eugene
Wait, are
is
you serious?
Wesley Eugene Schmitz?
Yeah.
Why are you laughing?
Because we're going to make fun of you now.
I
Why?
don't know. That just surprises me.
Because I'm not smart. Everybody's
I'll
like,
handle
"Oh,
this
you're-"
one.
I'll let you. I'll just.
You look great today.
In college. Oh, see, and I have a W shirt. See, I don't know how this works. See, look, there's a W. You're on the old YouTube watching us. Got a W on my shirt for Wes. And- okay, so there's a funny story when we worked together.
Mhm.
We were taking down the holiday decor at our
Yes.
community. And take it away, Makenzie, because I forgot what color.
Yeah, mind you, we had been working together for probably almost a year at that point. And so we're taking down the Christmas tree after a holiday, and I worked really hard decorating this tree. And so Wes is like helping me take off bulbs and stuff. And he like pokes his head around the corner and he's like, "This gold tree is just beautiful." And I'm like, "What part of this tree is gold to you?" Because it was red and green.
Does that make
It
gold?
was a shiny green.
Sure, yeah. And he was like, all of it? And I was like, none of this tree is gold. I don't know.
Wes is
Yeah.
about as colorblind as they come.
Yeah. Well, and I was like, how have we made it this long in our
And not-
friendship and in our working environment that I didn't know that you were colorblind?
Yeah. Very
Isn't that
colorblind.
crazy?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just you see colors, you just don't know what it is.
That's
So-
colorblind.
Why am I telling you?
You just
Wes, give us
perceive
the
things.
definition for
Yeah.
colorblind. It's when you see colors that you don't see.
There was a previous episode I was trying to describe to Philip what a push pop was. Did you ever have those as a
Mhm.
kid?
Yeah.
Yeah, the push pop. And he's like, you can keep saying it.
just
I still won't
You just
know.
kept saying it's a push pop, like a push
And then
pop. It's
I
a
would
pop
say
with
it
push.
louder. I'm like, it's a toilet paper roll with a stick with
Then I got
stuff
it.
in
I'm like, perfect. I know what that looks
Yeah.
And you're like, got it.
Yeah.
Know what it is. How do you not know what push pop? We do need to have a therapy session.
like. Yeah, I mean, I don't like the ice cream that I ate growing up at school was a Mickey Mouse ice cream with the chocolate ears. Remember that
Yeah.
one? Loved.
Those are
Great.
so
Lived for it.
good.
Yeah.
Um,
Forgot about
and we
that.
didn't really do. I mean, I don't remember eating a bunch of like ice cream pops at home.
Oh yeah.
We were on the farm, you know,
Yeah.
working the land.
You were making
Milk
your
and
own
the-
ice cream.
Right,
Yeah.
making my own
Churning
ice
that
cream.
butter. Well, let's get to the reason why we're here today.
Yeah.
Um, Makenzie, I don't know how to leeway in.
I'm the therapist. I feel like I can laugh at that. Today we're going to talk about suicide.
Yes. I was
I'm
like,
like, I
Wes
don't
is
know how to lead
hysterical.
Yeah, it's a heavy topic, and
Yeah.
we've talked about trying to not make it fun, but just have a serious conversation and try to make it light. But there's a lot that's happened recently, even here in Nashville a few months ago. Kelly Pickler's husband took his own life.
Naomi
You had
Judd.
Naomi Judd last year, April 3rd. God, that was such a sad day.
Mhm.
And God, going back, Robin Williams. Who are some other ones?
The DJ Avicii, remember him?
Mhm.
He did it. Anthony Bourdain,
Yep.
the chef. That was a shocker.
Oh, the guy, Ellen's DJ.
Oh,
Stitch.
Stitch.
And when you, from the outside, when you look at this, all of those people had everything. They either had fame or fortune, or were in a relationship or married. Stitch. I just said his name and now I forgot it. But he had a wife and kids and worked for Ellen. And then he went to a hotel and did it. So kind of tell us what you do and who, like people you work with, not their names, but but it's like, what do you do?
Yeah. So I'm a therapist. I work primarily individually with folks. So I'm working one-on-one in a therapy space. So think like, I don't know what you think of when you think of a therapist. People typically aren't laying on my couch, but they sit and talk to me.
Yeah.
And then I also do some group therapy as well. And I work teenagers all the way up to older folks, geriatric people, like end of life kind of stuff.
Oh, wow.
And so that's kind of my everyday sort of workings. I deal a lot with suicide in a way that I think when I was in school becoming a therapist, I was terrified of having a client that was suicidal. I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do, what's going to happen. But I think the longer that I've been sort of in this field, certainly it is still like scary and you want to treat it very seriously. But I don't think that the panic for me doesn't come up as much with just a little bit more like education as I walked on that journey with a couple of people.
And the panic for you was just if you had said the wrong thing and they ended up going through with it, that was going to kind of fall back on you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. I can imagine that would be a big stressor.
Yeah.
So, and you said the range of clients, all age ranges. Do you find that suicide in general, you talk about more with certain age ranges, or is it kind of running the whole gamut of people you see?
Yeah. So it's interesting in that I don't see anybody younger than about 12.
Okay.
I don't know how to talk to children in my waking life, so I certainly don't know how to do it in a therapist office. But I feel like I end up talking to teenagers more about suicide and suicidal thoughts and ideations and stuff like that. But I don't end up doing as much like safety planning or, work around suicide with my teenagers. That tends to be more of my adults that are struggling more with like intent.
And do you find that you have to start that conversation? Like maybe they're giving you hints, or are they coming out? Or a lot of people just saying, "Hey, I'm having suicidal thoughts."
Yeah. It can really vary, honestly. I tend to, if something in that room with me is kind of hitting on my radar, like if I'm just saying like maybe they're not being as open as they typically are, or I've had a couple clients that have really started in that moment, like talking a lot about all of the amazing work that we've done. Like it felt like they were like
preparing for an end.
Preparing for an end. And so sometimes I'll just come right out and ask them like, hey, tell me about what your thoughts around suicide are, or are you thinking about taking your life? With my teenagers, not as much. They will sometimes often just come out and say like, hey, this is something that's on my mind. Which I'm always thankful that they're willing to share that in that moment.
And I think that's one of the myths of suicide is that if you talk about it, you're going to make somebody more apt to doing it. Is that true or false?
That's false.
All right.
So more often than not, the best way through it is to just talk about it, right? Like, it is something that is, I think, very taboo, especially in our culture. And so being able to to talk to people and just label it and name it doesn't make them want to do it more or less.
Okay. I have a question. When you're not a part of an industry, you don't know too much about it. So now that you're in the industry, is let me try to figure out what I'm trying to ask. Is suicide are those talks more prevalent than you thought it would, like come up more than you thought it would, or is it every now and then?
Like, are people
is it as bad as you thought it was? Like, if you're not, like, I don't watch the news, so I don't know what's going on, then I tune in, I'm like, oh, shit's really bad.
Yeah.
Like, so is it like that once you're in that community and in that, is it, especially with your colleagues, right?
Yeah.
You gotta.
Yeah. So that's a tricky question, only because for me, I don't have it happen as often. I do more talks about it, or just like safety plans, things like that. I have not had a ton of clients in my office like ever even go towards like attempt. However, I have colleagues that work with veterans, and so they're seeing suicide or suicidal attempts at a much higher rate.
Depends on the group.
Yeah, so I think it really just kind of depends. I also have a lot of friends that work in community mental health, and so they're working with people who are typically experiencing more severe and persistent mental health concerns, and so they are seeing suicide a lot more than I am.
Do you think that, but having conversations with people like our parents' generation, you hear that the world's just not, it's just worse off now than it was in the 50s and 60s. I mean, all this was happening then. Are people talking about it more? I mean, we also have social media, email. We can get to each other a lot faster. So is it worse than it was? Is there any research on that?
I mean, I don't have by the numbers. I wouldn't venture to guess that it's probably any worse. I think probably people have access to information a lot more, which, hey, can be wonderful, because if you're feeling a certain way, you can go and Google like help and resources and have that right at your fingertips. However, we also have, people that are on social media, they're engaging in media a lot. I think like the last statistic I read was, especially for teenagers, they're engaging with some form of media up to 8 hours a day. Yeah, right.
Oh, heavens.
I need to check mine. I don't think it's 8 hours. But, I mean, if you've got a job and you sleep, that's all your day.
That's a lot. And so with that, there's more access to like online bullying, having other, I've had teenagers especially talk to me about like suicide pacts with their friends and and so I think that you hear it a lot more. I don't know if necessarily it is more prevalent.
Yeah.
And I looked up some statistics on this. I didn't realize 1 death every 11 minutes related to suicide. That's a lot more than I expected. And then the suicide rates are higher in American Indian population. I didn't realize. I mean, I knew there was some issues, but I didn't realize that was a significant increase there. And you mentioned veterans, people who live in rural areas. Never thought that. I mean, I never connected those two, but it makes sense. And then mining and construction work. Is a very high suicide rate. So, and then of course in our community, West, the LGBTQ community, it is, and I saw mixed, some said the leading cause of death and some said maybe second. Either way, it's still too high for the LGBTQ community. So I think that's really interesting, because I don't think people realize, if we talked about the every 11 minutes somebody doing this, the amount of people that are having thoughts about it.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't find statistics on people who thought about it and went through with it. But talk a little bit about like, what is that called? What, like, if you're just thinking about it, is that when you need to reach out, or is that a normal thing for us to be like, I'm having a bad day, I don't feel like I want to continue?
Sure. Yeah. So I think about when we're talking about suicide or thoughts about suicide and kind of a couple different levels. And so the first is passive suicidal ideation. So word ideation just means like I'm thinking about it, right? And so this passive suicidal ideation is something that I would say almost everyone at some point has had, right? It's not necessarily like I'm going to kill myself. It's more of, man, if I didn't wake up tomorrow, that would be okay. Or if something bad happened, I think like that would be fine. Or life is just really hard and I want the pain to stop. Right. So if we're honest with ourselves, I think we've all had thoughts like that, especially in rough times of our life. And then you have active suicidal ideation, which is those thoughts. And then you're starting to kind of like plan it a little. So this might be what I would do, or I might go about it this way, or I need to wrap these things up beforehand, right? And then you have like suicidal intent, which is, hey, I'm going to like I have a plan, I have the means, and I really want to end my life. It's the active piece of that.
What's the recommendation then? If you mentioned kind of those three levels, the first level was the passive ideation.
Yeah.
What's the recommendation if a friend says to me, kind of passively comments on it? Is that enough for me to do something, or do I just listen? Should I immediately
Yeah.
call the suicide hotline and turn him in?
Yeah.
Like what are we supposed to do during the passive ideation phase?
Totally. So I think first things first is I would just ask, like, hey, do you have a therapist or do you have someone you can talk to, whether it's a therapist or a pastor or whomever, right? Get them in front of like a professional. Um, and then I think you can be curious as long as you aren't trying to be like the savior, right? Like you don't have to stop someone from I mean, not that you don't have to stop someone from taking them lives, but like you aren't responsible
Right.
for their care. And so I think sometimes just being curious, if you hear your friend make a comment about like, God, life is really hard and I just don't want to wake up most mornings, ask them like, hey,
Yeah.
what's up? Like, can I help you? What do you need help with?
I think it made me think we just added two new sentences to our intake paperwork at the clinic. And the two questions are, how often do you have a sense of hopelessness? And I guess it's a depression, a way to screen out for depression. And then how much has it affected your daily activities? And it's really surprising to me the amount of people who are putting that they are having a sense of hopelessness. And it could be related to the chronic pain they're dealing with or whatever. But I don't think maybe we do a poor job sometimes of recognizing the amount of people around us that are putting on this great, beautiful Instagram face and then at home, like literally feeling completely hopeless, which is kind of what Wes talked about at the beginning, people who you think have it all.
Yeah.
You get these, like, how would he kill himself? He had such a great job or something, but I don't think we do a good job of understanding the hopelessness of our friends and our family. And
sometimes we don't know. And there was a suicide study that most people tell people that they're going to hurt themselves. So I guess the majority of them will say something. But I had a friend in Austin and he took his life. And he owned salons, he had the Range Rover, he had friends, but he went through a divorce 2 or 3 years before. And and now I'm thinking, I'm like, okay, he's over the divorce, he's over everything, right? But then once he did that, we were all shocked because no one had a clue.
Yeah.
If I recall, there was no note left. Crazy thing, fresh bag of groceries was still on the counter. So like he got home and something triggered him. So, and I've heard, because I've been in this realm a lot, the ideation, the thoughts, how to do it and stuff. But then it's like, I don't want to bother my friends. So I'd probably be like my friend, not say much, but there's times where I've reached out and then sometimes people may think you're wanting attention.
Yeah.
So there's so many different not variables, but there's so many different situations.
Yeah.
Where it's like, okay, you want to be cautious with it. Maybe bring it up to your closest friends, but
Yeah. Yes. I think when we're talking about, especially suicide prevention, one of the best things for prevention is taking away someone's means, right? Because in those moments, if someone kind of like your friend, right, there's a bag of groceries. So to me, that sounds like that wasn't a plan, right? That was like something happened in that moment, something triggered a thought. And there was nothing in between him and whatever the means were to take his own life, right? And so, when we're talking about prevention, a lot of it can be, do you have access to things that could harm you? Whether that's, I think it can be different for men and women as far as like what they choose to how they choose to end their own life, but like, with men, guns are a big thing. And so like access to guns in a home is,
Sure.
not having as quick access, because in that moment we're just looking for like the split second to get in between that person and the attempt. And sometimes all it takes is a phone call. Sometimes all it takes is just someone walking in. Sometimes it might just take that, hey, trying to get into my, gun safe, it was a pain in the ass. And so it gave me enough time to like sort of sit back and be able to regulate.
Right. Take some breath.
And I think it's 55%. I was reading suicides by firearms. That's a significant number. And you mentioned the disparity between men and women. And I don't remember the exact statistic, but women attempted it, but men were more successful at it. But that, not to get into a gun control debate, but like the gun thing for me makes it important to maybe slow down the process of getting a gun. Maybe I can't get between, a person and their gun if they got it at their house. But if I slow down that process of, I'm having a bad day, let me go buy a gun. You can go here in Tennessee. You can walk in and get your gun. You can be at Walmart in 10 minutes. Like it's easy. So that's would be a concern for me, is how do we slow down the process? If it takes you 3 days to get a gun, maybe during those 3 days, it's been a chance to talk about it.
You can go get a gun at Walmart, like right now.
I mean, slight exaggeration probably, but remember what Clive was telling us in our episode from last season, that you could, within an hour could be in. So if your intent is there, and you've already started having these ideations and all that, firearms are a big part. I think the next was suffocation, usually hanging, but I think it was like 20-something%. And the age range, I didn't know. I thought the age range would be low, but I was reading like 85 plus was the highest suicide rate in America. Other countries much younger. But I didn't realize that. In my mind, it was young people. Is that an end of life?
I think it's end of life, like especially older folks. Gone. They don't have as much community or connection. A lot of times they're dealing with like chronic illnesses and pain. And so like, I think, to me, and I don't know this to be true, right? So this is just like a guess, but I think that there might be a little less like suicide based on simple mental health with an older, like with geriatric clients, and more of like, no, I need the suffering to end. So I would be curious, even like, are those statistics including states that have assisted suicide, things like that. But so the reason that men are more successful with suicide more often is because of the means. With women, I think one of the top ways was attempting to overdose. And so that can that is not instantaneous, right? And so it typically gives people a second to be like, oh shit, I just did this thing and now I don't want to do it. And like, I can call for intervention. I can call 911. I can get to a hospital.
We actually just had one at the property I'm at.
Oh, that's right.
So in 13 years of doing this business, I've never had a death, a fire, a flood, anything. In the past 4 weeks, I've had 3 deaths. 2 were natural. 1 was an overdose. And she was only 67, was going through a divorce. And, you come from a big home to an apartment, and you don't know what was going through her mind. And she came down to the office every day, super sweet lady. But it's crazy because after the cops get them out and stuff, we as a company have to go through and do a video recording, because now you have heirs to an estate. You have, it can't even be it has to be the executor of the will, it can't be like a kid coming in. It has to be the executor of the estate. So we have to do all that stuff. Everything was laid out. Had notes on it. You thought she was packing to move. I mean, it was pristine. There was notes, there were letters, there was beautiful calligraphy. I mean, she had planned it all out. It was, and in a way, it was just like, that's how she wanted to go. So it was kind of beautiful in that moment, like that she did it on her own terms and went peacefully. And it was an overdose. But, and she let her family know, because they were all not in the state. So she knew she had time. Right. And, but then it was just so sad in those last moments. You're typing letters. I mean, all this was typed and beautifully handwritten stuff. So it was just so sad, But, I don't know if y'all have been there. I've been there so many times. And I think I don't know if it's hereditary, but I've always had these thoughts ever since I can remember that I didn't want to be here. And here's how I want to do it. Here's how I've tried to do it. But I don't talk about it because I don't want people to say, I want to be a resource for people. I want, and people have reached out, but I also don't want it to be that I'm seeking attention because I'm not, because it's like, I could totally see not being here.
Yeah.
For sure. But then there's times when you said, okay, you step back a little bit. There's so many beautiful things to look forward to in this world, in this life. So you have your down moments, but then all of a sudden you're like, oh, but I could do this and I could travel here. And then I just think of all the positives and that brings me right back out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a client one time. This was after they didn't go through with anything, because in that moment, as they were like preparing for things, they looked down and realized that they didn't have a plan for their cat. And like, that was enough. Like it wasn't reconciling that like life is beautiful. And a lot of people do, right? You're like, wait, I don't want to give up on this. But for her or for them, it was just this, like, I don't know what to do with my cat. And I don't want to and that was, like you said, when we talk about just that split moment, right? Like that's what we're looking for. Was just like, oh, I didn't plan for this piece.
Wow.
Do most, you've mentioned this, I think most people talk about suicide before they do it. Or is it?
I think it depends, right? Like once again, not to speak in statistics because I don't know, this has just been my experience, right? I see it kind of like, I think there are some people who are really committed to ending their life. And I don't find that those people are talking about it that often because they know that there's a chance for intervention, right? So like, I don't think that they're bringing it up super often because there is that chance for intervention.
And, Wes has talked about what he's dealt with before. And so from my perspective, anything that Wes might say to me that's slightly not negative, but if it makes me think, is he having a day? And then I'm like, well, what am I supposed to do? Like, do I reach out? And then that's annoying probably to him. Like, Wes checking in again, making sure, what are you thinking?
Respond to me.
What's the recommendation? What am I supposed to do? Do I just make it clear to him once that he can talk to me? Do I need to bring it up regularly? Or is that so nuanced that it's hard to recommend?
I mean, I think it is pretty nuanced. However, I think of it as being compassionate and curious, right? So like when you're dealing with really anyone, I think you can take that through like through most everyday life. But like when I have a friend that I know is struggling with mental health, like how can I be compassionate to them and how can I be curious about it? And sometimes it is just sitting with them and being like, hey, what's up? Like, we don't have to have this like mental health talk every time we chat. Right. But like, how are you doing? And like, can you be honest with me? There's definitely been times that like I've been checking in on a friend and they give me the very passive, like, oh, I'm good, girl. How are you? I'm like, okay, cool. Can we try that again? And like, and you be like, just be honest. Right. Like it doesn't have to be a serious thing. Like you can, I think even just be a little playful with it sometimes. Maybe not necessarily if somebody's talking about suicide, but like if you're checking in on someone and you really want to know how they're doing, think about how you would check on them any other time and like do that. Right. And I think it's okay to like push a little bit more and be like, hey, I know the last time we talked, you said you were dealing with X, Y, and Z. How is that going? Right. Just kind of like, check in just a little bit more, push a little bit more for more authentic answers.
And I think I would always worry that, like, if I called Wes, and I'm just using his as an example, but if I called Wes and I'm like, hey, you mentioned, suicide a few weeks ago. Here's a suicide hotline. Like, to me, that could be such a slap in the face. Like, in his mind, he's like, wait a minute, I'm just mentioned it casually, and you're escalating this. So, not that I wouldn't want to help, but I think I would limit like my interactions for fear, like you talked about at the beginning. You were worried about working with people talking about suicide in case you said the wrong thing. I don't want to be like, hey, Wes, here's the number.
Here's the number. Right?
Go ahead.
Yeah. I think one of the great things, especially if you know that like your friend or whomever you're, engaging with is in therapy, to even just ask them like, hey, is that something you brought up to your therapist before? Right? Have you talked to your therapist about it? Do you have in therapy, I do what's called a safety plan. That's a pretty common thing for people who are talking about suicide or self-harm. And so asking like, is that something that you want me to know about? If like you're close friends with someone, is like, do you have a safety plan? If it's something that if you know that they've brought up with their therapist before, just to see like what's on it, how can I be assistant? Like, how can I help with anything that might be on that? But you also don't have to make every interaction you have with that person about like, are you okay?
The daily check-in.
The daily check-in.
What's your suicide thought right now? 0 to 10.
0 to 10. Where are you?
And what's the safety plan?
Yeah, safety plan. So it's something that people do with therapists. And it covers a couple of different things. So the first thing is going to be typically you're listing 3 people you can call, 3 people you can reach out to, a person who can come to you, like you have your one safe person. Then you also have a couple of things that you can use as skills, like coping skills.
Okay.
To what we're hoping for in that moment. If somebody is at the point of thinking about suicide, we consider them to be pretty like dysregulated for their emotions. And so we're helping them learn skills to become more regulated. Right.
So when I feel this, then this is what I do.
Yeah. So I'm going to try these things to help like regulate my mood or my emotions, because it gets us in a little bit more of a, I can nerd out for just a second, but what happens is when we're finding ourselves really dysregulated, we're operating in an area of our brain that's pretty prehistoric. Like it is one of the first parts of our brain that came online. And so it's operating as if there's something out there and it's trying to like kill me, right? Like it is fight or flight. Like I need to survive. And when that is really the driving force in your brain, your prefrontal cortex, which is the part of your brain up front, is not really online. And it is the last thing for humans evolutionarily to develop, which helps us control your ability to regulate mood, your decision-making, impulse control. And so that's why when we're talking about, I need to have somebody be able to kind of like get something right in to sort of stop, to pull them back from making the immediate reaction. It's because I'm trying to give someone a chance to have their prefrontal cortex kind of come back online. And so that's what we're talking about when we're talking about kind of regulating again. It's letting that prefrontal cortex that helps with the decision-making skills come back online.
Pretty amazing, like what science can figure out.
I need a master's to understand that.
It's really interesting. But I wonder if it's the same kind of thing, like, and I'm not comparing suicide and anxiety, but the same idea of like, when I feel a certain way, I can learn certain techniques, because that's what my therapist did with me. Is when I would get so angry at certain things that would cue me about my past relationship. And not angry towards others, just like self. And teaching me that, like, as soon as I felt it, think this, go through these little exercises. So that's nice that that's a proven technique to be helpful for those dealing with suicide.
Totally. Because when we're thinking about suicide, like suicide isn't, for therapists or mental health providers, we use what's called the DSM, right? It's our diagnostic manual. So it's a big book of all of the disorders that are out there, right? And suicidality is not something that somebody gets diagnosed with, really. Like it's a symptom of something. And so people who are really anxious can struggle with suicidal thoughts. People who are depressed can struggle with suicidal thoughts. I work with eating disorders, and eating disorders are the second most deadly mental disorder out there. And part of that is because the suicide rate is so high, right? So like, it's not, suicide is the like sort of like call and response to other mental health concerns, if that makes sense. So yeah, we treat them similarly of like, if we're working with someone who's really anxious, we're going to be using similar coping skills, because it's really all happening in the same area of your brain.
What do people do if it's hereditary?
Yeah. So honestly, we have a lot of really good research now that it is pretty hereditary,
Wow.
even down to like the genome sequence, right? I don't know anything about that. That is way beyond me.
I'm gonna add that to look up. The old genome. That and nuance. I don't know what nuance is. That like annoying?
Nuance?
Yeah.
No, it's like fine detail.
Fine detail.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah,
fine
yeah.
detail. Okay.
But yeah, like with so we know that it is hereditary. However, that doesn't mean that like you are destined to like
As far as I remember, like I've had this.
yeah.
Like I've had these thoughts, and I thought in talking with friends, people are like, I never think of that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, I always do.
Yeah.
And it's something that you can't control what comes in, but you can control what goes out. You have to process that.
Mhm.
An activity that helps me is the paint by numbers.
Yeah.
Like it just takes my mind away and gets me into a happy place.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of, I don't know, controlling your destiny, just trying to
It gives
do
you
what
a
you
chance
can.
to like basic. So I think avoidance gets a pretty bad rap of when we're talking mental health terms, like therapists don't like for people to avoid things. But whenever I have someone, especially that's dealing with like a really hard or difficult emotion or a really high intensity time, avoid the shit out of that. Cool. Like if painting by numbers is what helps you sort of zone out and like gives you an ability to re-regulate yourself, awesome, do that, right? If it is if you have a favorite food, right? Like I love my comfort food is frozen pizzas, and so if I'm having a really hard day, all right, cool, like I'm gonna slam a frozen pizza and that's cool, right? It may not be it shouldn't be my only coping skill, right? But in those moments of really intense distress, it's okay to know like what your sort of like big players
Right.
are for regulating.
Yeah, because I think overall I want to have control over my life. I think we all feel we want to have control over it, and with just the world being, with social media, and there's just so much going on. Sometimes it's just those simple things, reading a book, whether it's 10 pages a day, whether you get through a page, because we all have a list a mile long, and that's partially it's like, I got to get this done. I have to go here. I have to work. I have to do this. I have to go to the gym, and I hate going to the gym. And it's just like, I want that to be a good outlet for me as I'm mentally trying to. And my therapist had me do a likes and dislikes like exercise. I'm like, I don't know what I like or dislike. Like it was so hard to do.
Yeah.
And keeping mementos around. One thing that helps me is I have 2 letters that my great grandmother wrote me. Wrote me.
Yeah.
She wrote them. And but it still has the stamp. I still have the envelope and all that. And I have that on my entryway as I go out, and I just touch them every day because I was so close to her. And I don't struggle every day. And I think it's nice to be able to talk about it. And I have great friends like Philip and you and many in our friend group that I could talk to, but I don't want to. But I also want to be a resource because I may be one of those that people don't realize that about me. I told one of my buddies back home who I love, his name's Andy, and I was having a bad day. We hadn't talked in 3 or 4 months, and that morning was such a bad morning. I just got a random text from him.
Yeah.
And another one of my buddies, Jordan, I haven't talked to him since high school. I got a random Facebook message from him one day. He's like, hey, I was thinking about you.
Yeah.
I didn't see him in years. And it was just the way the universe works. And those were really bad mornings. And it just, it just uplifted me, So that's why we always say, write a nice review about someone, compliment someone when you're at a restaurant, or send just a random message, send a note in the mail. You never know how it's going to help people.
Yeah, the Surgeon General just this week came out with a warning that loneliness is like the new epidemic, right? Like that I think we forget how much we are social pack animals, right? And so we need connection to others. And loneliness is a big piece with people who are thinking about suicide. And so when it makes sense that when somebody reaches out and checks in on you, that you're like, oh, okay. Like somebody, like, even if they don't know necessarily what's going on, right? They don't have to be like, hey, I'm thinking about you and I want to make sure you're okay. It could be just like hey, I thought about this random funny thing, or I haven't talked to you in a while. Like sometimes just that, like reach out, that connection piece can be so helpful.
Oh yeah. And these friends didn't know. My second friend, Andy, didn't know, but my second friend, Jordan, had no clue. any struggles like going. So that's a really good point.
Yeah. When I work with clients, especially if it's their first time in therapy, regardless of what they're in my office for, I frame it up as the 5 pillars of health, which is your physical, emotional, mental, social, and spiritual health. And so that's a lot, that's a lot to remember, but I will try and find things that I can do for myself in each of those categories every day that just kind of checks in, right? And looking at overall health. But social health, I think we forget about a lot, because I don't think we, collectively, I think we're kind of an individualist society, right? We're looking out for number one and stuff like that. And so being able to know that, hey, I'm part of a community, I have connections to others, that can help ground people when they are feeling, out of control, is to know that you've got people around you who are grounded.
Isn't it crazy? We're more connected now with all of this stuff in our phones, but we feel so disconnected.
Yeah.
I saw a meme. It said when phones were connected to the wall, we were more. Well, I forgot what the meme said. I totally had it.
That was a great build up.
That's
his memory.
No, I can't remember it, but it's like something about like connectedness. It's really good.
Sounds like it really made a.
Here, hold on. I'm going to try to find it.
Oh,
Y'all
good.
keep talking.
Oh, good.
I feel like if I had to guess, it would be like when phones were on the wall, connected to the wall, we were more connected to others.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
Did you see that meme?
I did not, but I just took a guess.
Dude, I have to find it. It was pretty much that. I won't look. But.
And I think sometimes we think we're connected. Like, I hear a lot, or especially young kids, like, I've got so many friends online. And like, so maybe we don't realize we're not connected. Like it's a fake connection where, we need the genuine in person, the energy we get from people.
Yeah.
And these like kind of pseudo fake relationships online, which I've done them. Goodness.
Of course.
But I think that's a big thing, that then you combine that with a pandemic, where we're stuck at home. You combine that with feeling of hopelessness. That helps explain why, some of the mental health issues that this company, this country, and the world's dealing with. That's a huge. I was at a little dinner thing last night, and a guy was talking about just the amount of like mental health that he's seeing from a police perspective, and they don't have the tools to know how to deal with him, because one person's just a little upset, and do you send them to the hospital, or this person's saying they're going to kill themselves, do you send them to the hospital? It's like we just don't have the means. So I think a lot of people are suffering. And it can come down to us, like you mentioned, or Wes talked too, about reaching out. Like reach out to your friends or people that aren't your friends.
Talk about it.
Ask people at work, or if you see somebody looking down or downtrodden, just, say something. Sometimes that's just enough to switch their brain, I would say.
Yeah. Especially like on the social piece. I think sometimes we think of social health as like socialization, and it's a different thing, right? Like socialization would be just the people that I talk to in a day, or learning how to communicate, or things like that. And that's all important, right? But when I'm talking about like, how do you connect with someone that is like healthful for you and for the other person, it's talking about like being able to be vulnerable, being able to genuinely connect. And so being able to sit with someone and like be present and be vulnerable with that person, like that is the social health piece, right? Like that's the connection piece.
This is still on topic of suicide, but it popped into my head. The comment that you hear after someone goes through with suicide is often that's so selfish of them to do that. Right? It's such a selfish move. How do you respond to that?
I definitely so me being kind of sassy, like I would have a conversation about that, because I don't think that it's selfish, right? Is it painful for the people that are left behind? 1,000%. And there's space to honor that, because you're right. That is so incredibly painful, right? However, I think about the person that ends up taking their life, that dies by suicide. If we can, for just a second, imagine what that must be like, the pain that person must be in, to take, right, like the ultimate last step in their life, right? And so sometimes people are hurting very badly. And it's silent. Sometimes we don't notice. And so I don't think that it is selfish. And I can also honor that it's extremely painful for people who are left sort of in that wake.
And with that said, you also had commented that you shouldn't feel responsible.
Yeah.
Like you can experience the pain of your loss, but it is not your responsibility,
right,
to make sure someone doesn't. Now, if they're brandishing a gun in front of you, yes.
Sure.
I mean, we probably have a little bit of responsibility there.
Yes. Yeah.
But, if you find out, your friend you hadn't talked to in a few weeks, and then you're like, well, I should have checked in. I should have called. Like,
not on you.
Not on you.
Not in a way that's not mean, but just like, I think people assume a responsibility for it because they're related. Like there's a relationship.
Yes.
Why didn't I know? Why didn't Wes tell me? Why didn't so-and-so, ask, trust me enough to.
Yeah.
So I think that is important to say.
Yes.
It is not.
It's not. Yeah. It's not your responsibility. Like you said, I think that we can take steps that let your friends know that you're a safe person to talk to. And that comes with a lot of responsibility, right? It's like, if I'm going to talk to you about something that's really, really vulnerable, like I need to know that you can honor the trust that I'm sharing with you, like that we're not going to go talk about it, to other people, like conversationally or gossip. Right. And that that you still, unless you are a mental health professional, you aren't a therapist, right? You aren't the first responder really in that situation. Think of yourself like, if we're talking about, if you are standing on the street and you see someone have an accident, it doesn't become your responsibility to be the EMT, right? It becomes your responsibility to call 911 or to go and see like, what can I assess in this moment, right? So like, I frame that up for people that have like loved ones or whomever that's struggling with suicide, of like, you don't then become the doctor that has to fix whatever physical ailment somebody has, right? You just become the person that is helping them in that moment.
That's good to know.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Because too, when we look and when it's kind of like when you WebMD a cold, you're going to be dead in 20 minutes.
Oh yeah,
like,
you got lung cancer.
When I'm looking at this and when I search it, if I'm having a down day or whatever, I'll look and I'm like, okay, have that. Yep, definitely not going out as much, not doing this, and for people who ask me, is it not drinking anymore? And it's not really. I've always had this.
Sure.
So there are people out there, I think, that struggle, outside of addiction and stuff like that, that are just, you look at this and like, well, this is what I'm feeling. I guess I'm depressed or suicidal and whatnot. And then it may not be the case. It's like, no, I love staying at home now. I love not being out as much. As like, do you go out less or do you talk to friends less? And part of that's like, I'm trying to be off my phone more.
Sure.
I was talking to my mom this morning. She's like, oh my God, it's been like a week. I'm like, yeah. And it's been nice. Not
talking to you.
Not just mom. Right. but it's like, I come home and I try to disconnect and that's just me trying to a new normal. If I don't want to be on my phone 8 hours, because we probably are. If you get a couple hours before work and you're on your phone, then you come home, that easily adds up. And these kids are on. So I don't want to be that statistic. But I think it's good too. I mean, I've had a lot of people reach out to me for the non-drinking thing, and people are more than welcome to reach out to us. We can get you in connection with Makenzie or a health professional maybe in your area. And just talking about things that's helped me. Philip's helped me so much and through the years. And it's okay. There's more good days than bad. And when you think of yourself, we had Tyler on a few years ago and he's like, just be 1% better every day.
Yeah.
Like, and when you break it down into something so simple, it's like, God, this world, fuck work.
Right.
Like it'll be there. Like this does not rest on my shoulder.
Yeah.
And then that just kind of takes you of like, yeah, there isn't as much stress in this world. You don't have to accept it.
Yeah.
When stuff happens and people are like, oh, and all this, I'm like, oh, it's none of my business. And it may have happened where I work. And I'm like, none of my business.
Not
like,
circus,
and I just let it go. And I'm like, it is what it is. So how can people find you?
Yeah. So the easiest way would be to check out the collective, which is where I work. So you can find us at mycollectivecare.com. They can also find my actual website, which is mackenziefox.co. So not com.co.
Oh, okay.
.co.
Yes.
Fancy.
Geraldine is not in the website.
Yes, no.
Okay.
There is no
Makenzie Geraldine.
There is no G or D anywhere in there. So MakenziFox.co. And certainly I'm in the Nashville area. I'm very well connected with other therapists in the Nashville area. But if you have people out there that aren't, please feel free to reach out. I'm still happy to help people get connected with any services that they might need.
You helped me
I did.
refer me to my guy.
I did.
So yeah,
Yes.
I just remembered that. I'm like, I did reach out to you.
I remember listening to an episode that you guys did. I think it was maybe like the first season. And Wes was like, I tell all of my friends to go to therapy. I don't go to therapy. And then
You were like,
I think I texted him afterwards. I was like, that's unacceptable. Not okay with that.
Yeah.
and you did the right thing, right? You listened,
Yes.
you reached out,
Yep.
you checked in with him.
Here
Yes.
we are.
And also there is a 24-hour suicide
Yes.
hotline. There's several. I think the one that we've got listed is just 988.
Yes.
You can text it or you can
Oh,
call
yeah.
24 hours a day. I think it's all over the world, all languages.
Yeah.
So that's a big thing. And I wanted to, the thing I've learned,
Mhm.
so there's suicidal ideation.
Yes.
And then what's the next? Is it passive?
So it's passive suicidal ideation,
Okay.
active suicidal ideation, and then suicidal intent.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And then the other thing I really like, the 5 things that we need to include in our day, the 5
Pillars
pillars.
of
What were
health.
those again? I
Yep.
like that.
Physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and social.
And if we're kind of touching on those
Mhm.
on a regular basis, that's
Yes.
going to help our
Yeah.
mental health. So
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Dub it down. Think of a pillar.
it-
Focus on
Yeah.
one thing. Keep it simple.
Mhm.
KISS. Remember that one?
Yes.
keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. What was that about? What-
I don't- my teachers would always say that.
Yeah.
Just to me.
I feel like the first time I heard it was The Office.
Oh, that tracks.
Yeah.
Could be.
Yeah.
Could be. I think we should decorate another Christmas tree this year. All
Yeah.
gold.
What
Let's-
color?
Let me go to. I'll go
Let
to
Geraldine pick it
Michael's.
out.
Eugene
Done.
and Geraldine.
Yeah.
Oh,
That sounds like an old country
Eugene and
song.
Geraldine. Yeah, let's do
I
it.
like
Let's
it.
do a holiday tree.
Perfect. Yes. I enjoy it.
I'll go to Michael's and just pick out whatever colors
I
I
think-
think would go well.
I think that would be a wonderful.
Yeah.
I feel like we could make like a TikTok.
It looked like an
series about
LGBT
that.
team.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, is that a rainbow one? Or
Wasn't supposed to be.
But it's all blue. No, it's not.
well, Makenzie, thank you so
you.
much for doing this.
Thank
we
you so
really
much.
appreciate it. I think this is it's a serious subject, so we wanted to bring a seriousness to it. But
Yes.
also, it's a prevalent problem.
Yep.
It's something that should be talked about with your friends.
Yeah.
It should not
Amen.
be. Yeah, it shouldn't be something that you're embarrassed of, or
Totally.
it doesn't have to be done at a group dinner. It
No.
could be one-on-one if
Yes.
you need it. But
Yeah.
plenty of
Reach
therapy.
out.
And I think the biggest lesson I've learned from therapy is to find the therapist that works for you.
Yes.
That just because you want to go to therapy, the first person may not be your therapist.
Try. Yeah.
Keep
try a few.
trying. And when you've got that connection, it's an amazing experience.
Yes.
Mhm.
It really is like dating. I tell everybody
Yeah.
that of like, hey, if we get into a first session and you aren't vibing with me, that's cool. Let me know. And we'll like find somebody that you will. So like
Perfect.
if you try therapy for the first time and you're like, this isn't for me, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Try somebody else.
And there's
Yeah.
online therapy too.
Yeah.
And
BetterHelp.
COVID really helped that. You can do
Mhm.
find a
BetterHelp.com.
therapist online quickly. So,
For sure.
all right. Well, it's
Well,
been good.
Yes. Thank y'all
It
for having
has
me.
Thank you,
been. I wore my
Makenzie.
W shirt because wow, this was great.
That's the reason you wore it.
That is.
Yes.
I love it.
2 shirts with my initial on it. And it's like so I can differentiate shirts in my closet.
Mm.
But I live alone.
Yeah.
So I'm like,
Who
that
else
was
is getting
mine.
those?
I don't know.
What color is that shirt, Wes?
It is a gray
It is.
Yes.
and
Yay.
blue. Navy.
Okay.
Black.
Yeah, I like it.
What
I think
is
it's
the W?
navy.
Oh
I
yeah.
can't tell. Yeah.
Navy and black are so close.
Well,
Thank you so much.
Thank
It's good
you.
to
yes,
see you.
Mackenzie, thank you.
Yes.
Wes, good to see
Way
you.
over
babe.
there, Phil.
Yeah, good to see you, babe. I hope everybody has a good week.
Yes.
Yes.
Rock it out. Reach out.
Thank you guys
send
for
a
listening.
message. Uplift someone's day today.
Yes.
Do that.
Love it.
Let's
All right.
do it.
Love y'all.
Love y'all.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Thanks for listening to another great episode of Two Bottles Deep.
Don't forget to give us a 5-star rating wherever you get your podcast.
And while you're at it, write us a fabulous review.
Please reach out to us on our email, 2bottlesdeep@gmail.com.
There is plenty of love in this world. Be a part of it.
Yay.